Hi, Austin Davis here with TrustMyMechanic.com, and I got a question that we need to make a video about that came from a reader. So here it is, and she asked, when I step on the brake, the car shakes. Do I need an alignment? Is there a tire problem? What's going on? Well, you probably have what's called rotor warp. The rotor, the brake rotor, is behind the wheel. So if you look, hopefully that camera can pick it up. Where I'm pointing, that's the brake rotor, this metal piece behind the wheel. And this wheel is cold, it's not hot, so I can put my finger on that rotor and rub up on it. It should be smooth as glass, and it's not. I can kind of feel some grooves. There's kind of a high spot at the very end. Incidentally, this stuff on the wheel is brake dust. As the brakes wear, the dust has some metallic flake to it that stick to the wheel. So this brake rotor inside there is spinning around. This is the brake caliper. Can you see that? And inside the brake caliper is the brake pads. So when you step on the brake, you squeeze those brake pads together. That brake caliper squeezes this metal rotor. That metal rotor has to be smooth as glass and have to be perfectly true. Otherwise, you're going to get shaking and shimmying when you step on the brake. So it kind of looks like this Oreo I just happen to have in my pocket. The center part is the brake rotor. This outer black part kind of is the brake caliper itself. I'm just going to see if I can peel some of it off. So the brake rotor is spinning around inside, and this brake caliper is moving like this because there's a high spot on the brake rotor. So what do you need to do? Well, the old school tried and true method was to take the rotor off the car, put it on a brake lathe, a machine that spins the rotor around. There's two cutting edges on either side, and it cuts off a thin layer of the metal and makes it smooth again. It's called truing. You true your brake rotors. But that also causes a problem because you're taking off a thin layer of the metal itself. That can cause the brakes to warp again because they're so thin. It's almost like somebody licked the inside of your Oreo off. So the brake rotor gets warped. How? Well, good question. When you're driving on the freeway, that brake rotor is hot, super hot, because the brakes have been riding on the rotor. You're stepping on the brake, producing a bunch of friction on the rotor. When it's rainy outside, there's a big puddle of water on the exit ramp of the freeway. You're at 70 miles an hour and you're stepping on the brake, coasting down to the exit ramp. You hit the puddle of water. You splash nice cold water all over that brake rotor that's nice and hot, and it expands and contracts, expands and contracts. And as you're coming to the final stop sign, you're pushing on the brake and you're pushing on the brake. That produces the warp in the brake rotor. The expansion and the contraction and the cold water and the final stop coming to a stop makes that rotor warp. So you can have it trued, or thanks to China, we can replace them. The rotors now are a fraction of the price they used to be 10, 15 years ago. It's a much faster job. You just buy the rotor and bolt it on. You don't have to wait for the truing process, which can take 2 or 3 hours sometimes. So ask your mechanic if they're going to do a brake job, or you have some kind of shimmy or vibration when you're stepping on the brake. Ask them to price brand new brake rotors in relationship to truing the brake rotors and see if the cost difference is acceptable. If it's $100 more, $150 more, you'll get a much better job long term. I get a lot of people that come in and tell me I had a brake job 10,000 miles or so ago, and now my brake rotors are warped. Well, did they true the rotors? And in most cases, they did true the rotors. So the brake rotor's thinner, so now you're out of the warranty period and the rotors are warped. They have to do the job basically over again. And this time they'll probably sell you new rotors because you really can only turn a rotor once and then it's just too thin. So that's what causes brake rotor warp, and that's how you can fix brake rotor warp in the two options. And I recommend trying to get new brake rotors. But just so you know, there are brake rotors on the rear if you have a rear disc brake car. And most cars do have rotors on the front and the rear now, brake rotors on the front and the rear. So when you step on the brake, then the steering wheel goes from side to side. The problem's in the front. It's a front brake rotor problem. If you step on the brake and you kind of feel this, or maybe the seat next to you shakes a little bit, it could be in the rear. And how to prove it, take the emergency brake release. So I'm pulling up on the release handle. Can you see this? And I'm slowly pushing down on the brake as I'm driving about 25 miles an hour. So pick a empty parking lot, pick a deserted street in your neighborhood, drive about 25 miles an hour, pull up on the emergency brake and don't let go, the release, don't let go, slowly push down on the emergency brake. And if you feel this jerk kind of like this as you come to a final stop, you'll feel it. Then the problem's in the rear. Why is it in the rear? Because the emergency brake only works on the rear brakes, not the front brakes. So we're eliminating any stoppage on the front brakes because we're only using the emergency brake. If you don't have this kind of emergency brake and you have a handle, push the release button on the handle and slowly pull up until the car comes to a complete stop at about 25 miles an hour. If you get any feeling whatsoever, the rear brakes need to be trued or replaced. So I hope that answers your question. I know my girls wanted an Oreo cookie, so thanks for that. Come by TrustMyMechanic.com. Let me know if I can help you. I appreciate it. Like this video, share it on Facebook. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.